Welcome back to my channel. This is gonna be more of like 2-in-1. So instead of just making it about just one fanfic that I read recently, I'm gonna do two. And just because these were a lot similar as far as theme goes, I feel like I like to call these two the Novelas of Dramione. Novela in Spanish meaning soap opera. These are very much drama filled. That's what kind of drew me in to these right away. So the first one is The Memory of You, and then the second one is Amor, Vincit, Omnia. The Memory of You was the longest out of the two. Draco and Astoria Greengrass. They're married. As we all know, arranged marriage, things like that. Very canon of the books, right? But Draco has been kind of sneaking around and sleeping with Hermione. They've always had a thing for each other, and nothing ever came out of it until the night before Draco's wedding. It all started with that, and then trickled down to his wife finding out, his parents finding out. Of course, Lucius not wanting that to be a thing because of the not being pure blood, things like that. He was not liking what he was seeing. He just thought, okay, this is just a fling that's going on. You need to stop this. You're married. Astoria obviously wanted to have this love in this marriage, even though it was arranged and stuff like that. She still wanted to have her happy ending, of course, and have a love-filled marriage. So she went to Lucius about it to see if he can help her to stop this whole affair going on that's messing up her marriage with Draco. Because obviously Draco, being so involved with Hermione, he was neglecting Astoria the whole time, to where he would just disappear, not show up a whole bunch of these nights. He would make excuses that he's working. She had enough. So she went to Lucius and was like, we need to figure out how to stop this from like happening. So like very novella like it is, of course, the drama with that. And then of course, instead of just talking to the person and being upfront, whatever, can't do that. So let's try and get to the girl. So they go to Hermione. Basically, Lucius goes over there and threatens her. He's like, look, if you don't stop this right now, I'm gonna go and murder your parents at this time. Hermione has obliviated her parents, so they don't even know who the heck she is. So she has kept them safe and hidden in a location to where nobody knows. Lucius comes to her and is like, look, I know where they are. This is where they're at. And if you don't end this right now, it'll be over for them, basically. So that scares her. She's like, obviously I have to end this because my parents' life is on the line. So instead of her talking to Draco, keep the drama alive, she agrees to end things. But not only does he tell her to just end things, he wants her to obliviate him to where he doesn't even remember anything about their relationship. All he remembers is everything right before the marriage. Just the casual working type of relationship that they had before. Because they actually work together in the ministry. He's an Auror, Harry's an Auror. They all work in the same office, but Hermione's kind of like a researcher in that office. So they have kind of like an acquaintance relationship before that. He basically assigns her to just obliviate any type of memory that he has with Hermione as far as like love involved. And any memories that are like happy that she can kind of plug in Astoria to where he feels like he loves Astoria. That way it doesn't seem like it's out of nowhere, like he's married to her and there's no feelings. She's assigned to basically put those memories and combine it with Astoria. So anything that he might think of that comes across in his head that makes him feel good, makes him feel like love and things like that, he'll automatically think of Astoria because it happened with Astoria, supposedly. So she agrees to do this. Of course, it's not easy for her to do in the beginning, but she finally convinces herself, like, look, obviously this is the only way that's going to work, because Hermione the whole time doesn't want to be no side piece, okay? Hermione wants to be the whole thing. Like, you're going to be with me, you're going to marry me, we're going to have kids, all this stuff. I'm not going to be this whole side thing. The whole time they were together, she didn't want to be that person. She was like, look, you need to just figure out what you need, what you want, leave her, do something with me. But he was always afraid. Throughout this whole fanfic, you have that starting in the beginning to where he ends up forgetting everything. Then you go and through how Hermione feels the whole entire time. Everything that she goes through, the depression, all these highs and lows that she's going through this whole time since their relationship ended. She just doesn't know how to take it because she was so in love with him. She's stuck in this place, dark place, to where she just so much just misery just drowning in it. And she doesn't just want to be her. She's not herself anymore. And finally, she is actually taken to the hospital, things like that, because of just all the stuff that she's going through. She's not even eating. She's losing weight. Everything is just like messing her up. And so finally, she ends up going to St. Mungo's to be treated because Harry finds her on the floor, like all just messed up, just drinking, everything. So she ends up seeing a therapist. Actually tells her, you need to start like journaling, writing kind of like letters to Draco, to her in her own journal. No, not meant for him to see, but at least things that she could just write down her feelings, just let everything out, just kind of just let it all go. And she does that, and that seems to kind of help her. Throughout this process, she is actually comforted a lot by a certain friend. This friend happens to be Blaise the Beanie. So here's what this another situation comes through with all this drama. I'm telling you, it was this one is so filled with drama, it's perfect. But you have it to where obviously Draco is best friends with Blaise. Well, Blaise, during the time, he's the only one that kind of like knew about their affair, knew every inside and out of their affair, because Hermione would actually like confide in him, tell him what was going on. Draco also told him things, so he knew the inner parts of everything. And he tried to kind of help and like, look, Draco, you need to do this because whatever. If you're gonna be with her, you need to leave your wife. If not, then stop. Whatever. He was like that kind of guy. He was on the other side trying to uplift Hermione, trying to be like, look, you don't deserve this, things like that. And then the whole time I'm reading this, I'm just like, something's gonna happen obviously with him, because the way he acts with her in this book, you just can tell that he has feelings for her. And I'm kind of just like, no. The whole time, like, no, you're not supposed to be with Hermione. Like, what you doing? Mm-mm. But of course, the inevitable happens, and he ends up comforting her through her worst time. So of course, what ends up happening? She ends up kind of falling for him. So then you have this whole situation now with him, and now they end up together. So now you have Hermione and Blaise together. And as this is happening, then Draco living his life as he's recovering, because the way they kind of cover his whole obliviation is he got injured while on a broom accident or something, and that's why he can't remember things. But he feels like something's missing, something's incomplete, like he doesn't understand what is going on, but something's missing. You have Narcissa, you have Lucius, and you have Astoria trying to reassure him that, look, you just had memory loss, it's fine, all this different stuff. Oh, and I forgot this part. Meanwhile, what really ends everything, to the point to where they're like, look, we need to end this affair. The biggest thing that ends it is because Astoria ends up being pregnant. And that just makes everything just go to a halt and just like, look, this can't happen anymore. Hermione not only agreed to do the obliviation because of her parents being threatened, but because there's also a child involved. And she wanted that child to have both loving parents. That, in her mind, was not going to happen if she's in the picture. So that's also another thing. So when he ends up getting up from his injury that he has, and he realizes what the heck. So he's like in the house for like a month or so. And he's like, but what else do I do? Like what, like I can't remember things. And they think he making him seem like he's so fragile, he can't do anything. They tell him that he used to work at the ministry as an auror. So now he's like, well, I want to go back to work. I can't just stay at home all day. Like he loves being with his kid, things like that. But he's just like, I need to go back to work. Astoria doesn't want him to go back to work for obvious reasons. You know, Hermione works there. So it's like, they're afraid of them coming across each other and maybe bringing back memories. So they try as much as they can to kind of keep them separate. And finally, when he ends up sneaking around and just figuring out a way to go back to work, because they don't even let him go back to work right away because of his memory loss. So like, we don't even know how valuable are we coming back to work. So he goes through all these tests again, like he did before. The test and training, all that stuff. He passed flying colors like nothing. So he proved that he was able to go back to work. Finally, he goes back to work, and that's when he comes across Hermione. The thing is, what they haven't realized the whole time is even though they obliviated him and he doesn't remember things with Hermione with their relationship, he always still had feelings for her. Since actual in Hogwarts, everything, he's had feelings. So when he sees her, those feelings start to come back up. Even though it has nothing to do with their relationship that just occurred, it's more of old feelings. So he still feels the same way he used to. It's inevitable that it's gonna come back. And that's what they feared. So they tried so hard to keep him away from it, but obviously fate. He gets jealous because he finds out about, you know, Hermione being with Blaise, and he's like, how does this even happen? Because remember, Blaise was very much his best friend, and he knew how much Draco loved her. Then when Draco actually talks to Blaise, Blaise kind of treats him a certain way. He's like, why are you treating me this way? We're friends. So it just becomes this love triangle in a way. And you're like, oh my lord. So then you have this love triangle. So I'm telling you, this is very much, if you just love drama-filled fanfics, this one is it. A lot of it involves the memories. You use pensive stuff, so you try and recollect things. It's just, they go through a lot that you would think it would be in the beginning of a fanfic, but it's not, because you end up finding out how they actually fell in love. So that's kind of cool. Like what started it, and then the process of everything, which actually ends up coming later on in the book, which I kind of like. You do see how, as characters, they tend to grow. They grow from this, and it kind of ends up being a good thing out of something horrible. So even though this was a horrible thing that happened to both characters in their relationship, it ends up helping them so much in the end of being such a stronger couple, ready to just take on anything in their relationship. And that's the beautiful part of it. This one was very much a really good slow burn as well. And so if you love slow burns, perfect. I think this slow burn, when you finally get to the moment that you've been waiting for, which is obviously when he remembers, or just when things happen with them, or it's like, oh my god, the recollection and everything. When things finally start to happen that you want to happen, 75% into the book. 75% in the book. This book was a slow burn, I'm telling you. And she even warns you in the fanfic. She tells you, this is a slow burn. So if you're really into slow burns, this one's it. But it was satisfying. It really was. And so I would highly recommend this one if you were very much into that. The other fanfic that I was reading that was very much Novelas of Dramione. It is called Amor. Hold on. Can't remember the name. Amor Vincit? Omnia? Amor Vincit Omnia? Yeah. So it's Latin for love conquers all. This one, you want more drama. This one has to do with Hermione is dating Ron. Yes, surprise, surprise. No. So I guess based more on the books, right? And she ends up finding out that Ron has been cheating on her with Daphne Greengrass, of all people. That one kind of threw me off. I was like, interesting, okay. So they were, I guess, together for 3 years, and he was basically cheating on her for 2 of those years. And it starts out with them during Christmas time, and at this point they're already broken up because Hermione like had enough. She just like she can't be in this relationship anymore. This is before she finds out anything about this, but she can't be in this relationship anymore, and they agree, you know, separate ways, stuff like that. Then Christmas morning, she's at the Burrow with the Weasleys, and Ron decides to just announce some great news, which who in his right mind thinks would be great news for anybody, especially with Hermione there. He ends up announcing that, oh, me and Daphne Greengrass are engaged, blah, blah. She's like, what? Because according to Hermione, she knows that they're dating, yes. But she only thinks they've been dating for like 3 months or 6 months. I can't remember. And of course, thinking like, you only been with them for like 3-6 months. Like, why, how the heck are you going to be engaged already? So like, what is happening? And he ends up spilling the beans about how he's actually been with her for 2 years, I believe. Yeah. And she's like, wait a minute. We had just broken up. What you talking about, dude? What do you mean you've been together for that long? And then she realizes that he was basically cheating on her for the whole time. And then things start coming back into her head, like, now that things are making sense, because the way he was acting with her was just gross. This is very much if you're a Ron fan, I suggest you not read this one, because this is very much Ron bashing. Like, this one is like, we hate Ron. So if you're a Ron fan, I don't think you should read this one, because they just bash him. He is the villain of the story. Okay, everybody, she basically like just cuts herself off from the Weasleys at this point, which is also sad. You know, we love the Weasleys because they all tend to side with him. And she ends up finding out that Harry knew for the 1 year of that relationship, he knew that they were together. So not only did she find out that he was cheating, but she also finds out that Harry knew, Ginny knew, all these people knew, even Molly knew, and nobody told her. Now the crazy part is, we end up finding out that the reason that Harry and Jenny and none of them ever like confronted or told Hermione about it is because Ron made it seem like Hermione was fragile. That was the big thing in this book. She was fragile. That if they were to come to her about the situation and kind of tell her, she would kill herself. That was basically what he was saying. Like she was like, she's not at a state to where she could handle this. Please don't tell her. I don't know what she would do, because he made it seem like she was just out of sorts because of her parents. Because her parents end up dying. Even though she ends up obliviating them and she saves them, right? But they end up dying, I think in this one, they died in a car crash or something. Not long after that actually happened, to where she saved them. And that just sent her to a dark place that obviously she's upset. It's her parents. First she obliviates them. Now she finds out they're dead. So it's like, it was kind of like for nothing. He ends up not being there for her. He kind of is like, okay, the first couple weeks after it happens, he's like, okay, like I get it, comforts her, whatever. But after a while, she just doesn't get back to herself. And he's just like, what the hell? You need to like get over it. It was horrible. Like, who are you to tell her that? And he just becomes this ugly person to where she's just like, what? I just can't. Like, so finally he has this plan basically to just kind of treat her like shit the whole time. That way she kind of could just be like the decision maker to just end the relationship. That way he's never pictured as the bad guy. Like, he just wants to be put out like he's like this good guy. He did what he can, and then, that's it. So that was his whole objective. For him just to be the good guy and just get what he wants at the end and screw her, basically. Like, that's how it was. So it paints him in this light that you just don't like him. Like, he's just an asshole. So at this point, she just cuts them all off. It's like, I'm done. So she ends up going to Theo's house, to Theo Knott. Now, she knows Theo Knott because she actually works with him in the ministry lab and stuff for researching different stuff. So they work together. So the only person she knows that she could actually go to is him, because he kind of like, it's like her work friend. So he leaves it up to where it's like, look, like, I'm here for you if you need me, blah, blah. So she takes that and is like, okay, she runs with it, because all she ever had was the Weasley family and Harry. Like, that's all she had. So where else is she gonna go? First thought was Theo. Okay, so she goes to Theo. Confides in Theo. He's like, what the fuck? Like, I can't believe this happened. This is crazy. So he offers for her to stay at his house. And she stays there, and, he brings Pansy over. Pansy is actually dating Luna Lovegood. Huh. That's a new one, right? Only Weasley that actually ends up trying to look for his George. So he actually goes to Theo's house. And they're like, how the heck did he find out where I was? And it's just like, well, he put two and two together. They work together. So he's like, who else would she go to? So he's like, okay, I'll try going there. So he goes there. He's determined to just talk to her, because he's like, look, I didn't know about all this stuff happening. I hope you know this. Like, I didn't know. And I don't want you to paint this picture where I'm like my family, because what Ron did to you was dirty. Like, I'm not even for that. So I'm just not talking to them anymore. He said that he basically told him that I punched Ron in the face because of what he did. And he left. He said he wasn't going to talk to any of them anymore. So she was like, wow, I can't believe you did that for me, blah, blah. He ends up still being close with Hermione. So Hermione does have George on her side, which is pretty cool. And actually later in this fic, Theo and George actually get together, which is interesting too. She ends up getting close with all the Slytherins, which is interesting. She gets close with Pansy. She gets close with Theo and Blaise and all these people. And Blaise is actually with Padma, I think. Padma. And so they're together. And she ends up like being really close with them and finding out that they're, I guess this is much very found family. So she gets really close with them and becomes really, really good friends with them, and finds out what it truly is to have friends like this. Because she never felt that way with Harry and Ron, which is kind of sad. Like, that's the one thing I thought was sad in this fanfic. It was very much like, kind of shits on the Golden Trio. But it's like, she realizes what she had with them was not real. It was not real friendship. It was more about them and how they used her. That's how it was portrayed. And she ended up finding friends in the Slytherin group, which was interesting to her because, she wasn't expecting that to happen. Not only do you have this drama going on with that situation, but Hermione used to secretly date Draco from 4th year all the way to the end of the war. It was in secret the whole time, but nobody knew. And it kind of started out with a detention that they both had taken at Professor Flitwick's class. It was right after the Yule Ball. So you know how Draco was always like getting onto her shit about, you know, whatever. And they would always bicker back and forth banter. And, you know, this happens right after Hermione goes off on Ron and is like, well, next time put up enough courage to ask me, blah, blah, blah. That part, right? After that part happens, she runs. In this fanfic, it shows Draco sees her running away. He's like, what's happening? So he runs after her. And she goes into the laboratory. She goes into, I think, Monet Myrtle's laboratory. And she's crying. And then she's like bent over the sink crying. Then Draco comes behind her. And he's like, Granger. And she's like, leave me alone, Malfoy, blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, why are you over here crying? You know, just back and forth, right? Anyways, they end up getting into a fight. They go to the hallway and wands are drawn and Professor Flitwick finds them before they start to hex each other. Right before they're about to hex each other, then Professor Flitwick comes and he's like, whoa, what the heck are you two doing? This is uncalled for. You're both getting the detention. So they get detention for like 6 weeks of detention in his class. When they finally go to detention, he's like, look, what's going to happen is you're going to stay in this classroom from 3 to, I think it's like 4 hours, I think. Every day for 6 weeks. I think it's what it was. It was every day? I can't remember. Anyways, so, and they're like, what you're basically going to do is you're going to get to know each other. I'm going to leave you two in here. We're going to have wards around this whole classroom. You cannot leave. Wards will be up from this time to this time. After this time, then you can leave. But you're going to use this time to get to know each other. And at the end of this whole 6 weeks, you're going to write and tell me 5 facts about each other. That's the assignment. So they're like, what? So he leaves them to there. The first day they're kind of like not looking at each other, sitting separate, whatever. And Draco tries to talk first and Hermione just ignores him, looks out the window, like whatever. So he does try first. The next time, again, this is when they actually start again. Then they finally start talking. And they kind of throughout this time build a little friendship. They start understanding each other more. He starts to come clean about certain things of, you know, why he acts a certain way, or she's like tells him about her life and things that she likes, her Muggle life, and she tries to understand why he thinks a certain way about Muggleborns. They kind of come to an understanding, and he kind of comes clean to her, like, I don't think that way about Muggleborns. I don't like using that word. Basically just kind of reassuring that, look, I'm not this ugly person you think I am. They basically end up falling for each other. They have like they use the room of requirement for like their spot for them to meet. So that's kind of cool. It makes an appearance for that. So they basically have this relationship the whole time, right? And even during the summer, they'll hang out. He actually ended up meeting her parents before they passed, and they knew that they were dating, things like that. They saw how happy they were. Narcissa was all for the relationship. In this one, they portray Lucius as like a horrible, like even times 10 horrible father, to where he would beat Draco and Narcissa. I feel like all these other ones have shown Lucius as being very loving towards his wife. And yes, being a certain way with Draco, but not to where it was physically abusive. Maybe mentally, but not physically. And this one really portrays him as like physically abusive to both of them. They hide their relationship from him, so he never even knew about it. And Narcissa was all for it. By the time the war happened, and they obviously dated throughout the time that Draco was going through that moment where he was with Voldemort trying to tell him that he needs to kill Dumbledore, things like that, all that stuff. Everything. It explains so many things, and how Hermione was trying to help, and how he was being standoffish from it because he didn't want her involved, all that stuff. So it's kind of cool how it goes through that and seeing how it would be on her end and how it would make sense through those situations. After all that, and after the war, in order for his obviously Lucius ends up going to Azkaban, and Hermione ends up testifying and helping Draco not to be put in Azkaban. And she does that by talking to Kingsley and, you know, the whole situation that happens with that. But she does end up helping him to not go to Azkaban. And once he is, you know, pardoned and not put in Azkaban, she is excited because afterwards she runs to where he's at and talks to him. We can finally be together and all this stuff. And he's just like, no, we can't. And then you're just like, what? And he's like, look, I don't want you to be associated with a Death Eater. Like, I don't want you to have that on your name. So his whole thing is he loves her, but he loves her so much that he doesn't want that tarnish her name. He doesn't want that. And it truly upset her because she loved him. She don't care. She loves him. She wants to be with him. But he just convinces himself, no, they can't be together. So that's what ends their relationship that they had throughout all of school. That's what ends everything. And she gets so heartbroken and he leaves, and he actually ends up moving to New York, and he's in New York for like the next 3 years. So 3 years, obviously. So she ends up finally like trying to live her life because she knows he's not going to come back. So what happens? She ends up going with Ron. So that's when that whole Ron and her situation happens. Nothing ever happened with her and Draco during Ron and her relationship, but she did still love Draco, but she never saw anything happening because he left. But nobody knew about their relationship. So when she was with Ron, Ron never knew, Harry never knew, nobody knew. She lived her life and tried to be with Ron, but it was just, at the end of the day, it wasn't what she wanted. That was not who she was supposed to be with. When that whole situation happens with Ron and she goes to Theo for help, Theo, being best friends with Draco, Theo tells Draco, hey, guess what just happened? And he tells him. He just feels horrible. So he goes and tries to come back to London. He decides, okay, fine, I'm coming back because even if I'm just friends with her, I don't need to have a relationship with her, but I just need to be with her. And it's not fair for her to go through that. So he comes back with that intention that he would obviously love to be in a relationship with her, but he's not expecting it. As long as he has at least her friendship. That's what starts everything back up with them. And so they end up getting a relationship again, everything, all that stuff. So it was really good. It's also had its fair share of smut. So if you're really into smut, this one has a lot of it. And it kind of has a lot of it so much to where it's like, okay, get on to the story. Like, I don't mind, of course, like smut and all that stuff, but I just would rather have more plot, like more excitement of something in between, more that, not so much, but in this one had a lot of it. So if you're into that, this would be perfect for you. I feel like that kind of made it drag a little bit at the end. I think I'm just more into the darker ones. These are definitely good ones to be more fluffier, drama filled for sure. I tend to feel like I get more involved and more like, I just need to engulf this whole freaking fanfic right now when it's like dark. So I've seen that pattern with my stuff that I've been reading. Overall, it was still a good read. This one was actually shorter than the first one, but I definitely give these two a read if you are very much into drama-filled Dramione, what I like to call novella Dramiones. I think that was it for these past two reads that I did. I'll see you for the next one. I think the next one I'm going to read is Perfectly in Pieces because I am craving my darker fanfics again, and I've heard that was pretty dark. So we'll be diving into that one. That one's about like 65 chapters, definitely a lot longer, so we'll see how long it takes me to read this one, so that way I can make the next video talking about it. See you guys in the next one. Bye.